we were sitting third row front center, and like I said, we all ran pretty hard in the mid '80s. We were having fun. I'll just leave it at that. One point, there was a long white balloon that they were throwing around behind me, and it landed in my lap. And this thing was probably 7 feet long white, flag down the U.S. flag down one side of it, and the four of them came. I had it. The four of them came to the front of the stage: Bruce, Clarence, Nils, little Stevie. And I stood up on my chair and I shot the balloon right over Bruce's head, and he had a duck. And he looked over to Clarence and said, "What an asshole!" And I was like, "That's me. I'm the asshole."
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We're recording this at the end of July. A lot of stuff going on in Bruce land. Yeah, but my buddy, brand new friend, Saguto, is joining me. Vince, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me, and great to be here.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Let's see. I'm in my 50s, barely. Bruce fan for a long time. Quite a few other concerts, but certainly following Bruce is priority number one. In the wine and spirit business, just adopted a baby girl who's a little over 2. Nice. Life is good.
Very nice. Favorite bourbon? Do you have a favorite bourbon?
Funny you say that. So I actually sell Redwood Empire.
Okay.
For the Mid-Atlantic region. Redwood Empire product out of California. The same guy that created Blackstone and Mark West. Is now in the bourbon business, and we've got 3 core types and a few other types that are getting a lot of support and a lot of success across the country.
Oh, nice. The reason I ask is, and there is a Bruce tie. I've told this story multiple times, but way back 2012 during the Wrecking Ball tour, Bruce wasn't coming anywhere close to Dallas.
Yep.
So I feel the pain for everyone who this latest tour is like, how can he not be going to California? You know? So my wife and I left Dallas, drove to Kentucky, did half the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, then went up to Cleveland, watched the show in Cleveland, did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, drove back, did the second half of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and then came home. We called it our Bruce and Bourbon tour.
Nice.
And so ever since then, we just have had a love of the science and the art of making bourbon. You know,
and it's really both of those things. And
it is, isn't it?
The more I learn, the more I realize how much I need to learn, how much there is to know.
Yeah.
And it's you hit the nail on the head. It's a science and it's also an art, no doubt.
Yeah. And so I always think it's fascinating. And so I just made a note of your bourbon, and so Lynn and I will have to check it out. So
you're in Chicago.
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, you're in Dallas. So what's the big chain there?
Specs, probably.
I think all 3 types are in Specs. So there's a bourbon, there's a rye, and there's a whiskey. The bourbon is Pipe Dream, the whiskey is Lost Monarch, and the rye is Emerald Giant. Each
Okay.
one of the types takes its name from a tree in the Redwood Empire forest, which is pretty
Oh,
cool.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that. We went to a distillery in New Orleans that they do a lot of different types of alcohol spirits, and each of their brands were named after a neighborhood in New Orleans, which I
Oh,
was
that's
very
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Yep.
I love that when there is a reason behind, when you name. Um, I I visited a company once that was right outside of Louisville, Kentucky, and all their conference rooms were named after Kentucky Derby winners.
Nice
Yeah, and my company
and,
does.
and appropriate.
Yeah, and my company does roadside assistance for the RV industry, and all our conference rooms are named after national parks. So yeah, so
Nice.
that's kind of nice.
And
Well,
and that certainly makes sense.
yes, absolutely. All right, so Vince, let's start at the beginning. Talk about where did you grow up and what kind of music did your family listen to?
Chevy Chase, DC, which is right on the border of Maryland and Chevy Chase. Music, I think my first love was Led Zeppelin, and,
Okay.
and that was for a very long time. It took me years to get off of that or get off of them and move on to other things. And I guess I landed on Bruce probably 85 and then really kind of kicked it in, I'd say probably late 90s, early aughts.
Mhm.
And now, my motto is I never want to see my last Bruce concert.
Yeah. So what kind of music um did your parents listen to?
They weren't really music
They
folks.
weren't
No,
yeah, so there wasn't a lot of music in the house.
no, it was more peers than it was anything else.
Okay.
I had a buddy who's kind of pissed at me now because he was the big Bruce fan
Okay.
back when we were growing up, and now I'm far and away surpassed him as far
Yeah.
as my fandom.
So I usually ask this question, um, what about, when did you first discover Bruce and what about him spoke to you? But I'm going to do a double shot, like kind of, I want to know also um, what about Led Zeppelin originally spoke to you? And then go into, after you tell that, talk about how you discovered Bruce. I'd like you to do both.
Led Zeppelin was I was at my brother's party, and
Okay.
he was playing Led Zeppelin 4, the very first song, side one, Black Dog, and I was standing right next to the speaker, and
Okay.
that thing blew in my ear and blew right into my soul, and I was there for a very long time. I'd say, probably Bruce too. It's the energy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the energy, and I think both of them certainly have it, whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's obviously a lot more layers to it, but it's the energy that comes from the both of them.
Yeah. Did
Obviously, drastically different, but
yeah.
certainly,
Yeah.
it's the passion, the energy certainly pours through.
Vince, do you still have a soft spot in your heart for Led Zeppelin?
I do, but it doesn't scratch the itch like it
Okay.
used to.
All right.
I mean, and I can still, for the most part, for the first 6 albums, I can call out when the song. My wife hates it. I love hate.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll song come on and I'll just call out 412, and she's like, I know, 4th album, first side, second song, I got it.
They just put 3 or 4 days ago, maybe it's been a week, they've done a Springsteen hurdle where it plays up to 15 seconds of the song and you get to pick the song, and you have 6 tries to guess. And so sometimes I do well, and every once in a while Okay, that was an obscure one. I missed that one. So you would
Yeah,
do well at that game. That's
probably.
great. Yeah. All right. So you're loving Led Zeppelin, but Bruce came a knocking. Talk to me that story. Tell me that story.
1985, RFK, we got, it was a lottery. And back then you had to wait overnight outside at wherever they were selling tickets. And we did it. We waited in line. You had to get there like 6 hours ahead of time. And then they did a drawing. The drawing, we actually picked number one, which meant we came back the next morning, lined up. And when we lined up, we were very first one in line to get tickets. So we ended up getting, I'll never forget the number. It was 10711 was the number that one of us picked out of the hat. And that ended up being number one. So we ended up getting third row, front and dead center for RFK. And we did it up. This was, I worked in Georgetown at the time. This was 1980s, and all the rumors about Georgetown in the 80s are true.
Okay.
I'm living proof, sort of.
Okay.
And so we got a limo. Rode there in the limo on the way there and the way back. It was, and I'll never forget getting to the basically the field, and I guess we walked in on the other side, and the other side of the field from where the seats were. And so the usher just keeps saying, go that way, go that way, go. So we just keep walking, and the stage and the speakers, everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, I knew it was third row, but I didn't get it until I got to my seat. And we were RFT, we were right there. And he came out and kind of looked at us and said, you ready to go? And off we went. And it was, I remember getting there and picking up my seat. They were folding chairs at the time. And I said, I picked up my chair and I said, I paid $18.50 for this seat. And I still have that seat with me in this house.
No way. That is hilarious.
I walked out of the stadium with it like it was just like a cane, and nobody said anything. I got back to the limo, waiting for everybody, and I'm sitting in my chair while everybody else starts walking up.
That is greatness.
So that's also like my first story. I don't know if my wife's here. She's probably heard it 35 times. She could probably tell the story. So we were sitting third row front center. And like I said, we all ran pretty hard in the mid 80s. So yeah, we were pretty, we were having fun. I'll just leave it at that. One point, there was a long white balloon that they were throwing around behind me, and it landed in my lap. And this thing was probably 7 feet long white, flag down, the US flag down one side of it. And the four of them came, I had it. The four of them came to the front of the stage, Bruce, Clarence, Nils, little Stevie. And I stood up on my chair and I shot the balloon right over Bruce's head, and he had a duck. And he looked over to Clarence and said, what an asshole. And I was like, that's me. I'm the asshole.
Why did you decide to go to a Bruce show? Had you just heard that it was going to be a great live show, or?
Well, yes. It was the thing to do back in the 80s, with Born in the USA and 10th Avenue Freeze Out and everything. It was just, it was just the energy to get tickets and go to the show.
Yeah.
I think we actually probably got the tickets and the quality of the tickets by blind luck.
Okay.
Like, it was after a softball game, and I think somebody said, oh yeah, I think we need to go by and get tickets. So we just went over, and so we just kind of fell into it. And it was, incredible show. I remember it was the first time I saw Trapped live.
Okay.
Which just melted my face. And that certainly planted the seed.
So I've often told the story, Vince, that there's two kinds of people. There's the people that go to their first show and say, wow, that was long. And then the people that go to their first show and say, oh my goodness, I have to go see this guy as many times as I can. So it sounds like you're in the second end. Talk to me.
38
Yeah.
shows. I've traveled as far west as Arizona and as far east as Prague to see him.
Wow.
I've been on the radio show with Dave Marsh and Jim Rotolo.
How did that happen? Talk to me, because I have not been able to do that yet.
Well, I did my wife and I actually did the very first one. It was an auction for Dave Marsh's wife's daughter.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but that was the charity.
Yeah.
And it was the very first one, so the price you had to actually obviously bid on it.
Yeah.
And it didn't, I mean, for what it was and for the price that I've seen after it, because now they've done it, every year.
Yeah.
It's part of that auction. But this was the first one, and this cost $3,000. And the ones the price I've seen after have been at least
a bargain.
Triple, compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, $3,000 for, my wife and I got to do an hour live radio show with Jim Rotolo and Dave Marsh. And that was pretty.
Yeah, I imagine that is very cool.
And then I did the Be the Boss thing too, which Vinny, who's the guy that does the music for Jim Rotolo.
Yeah.
He's the one that records it. I actually called him back like 2 weeks after, and I said, hey, can we cut that again? Because if you can actually drop that like 2 weeks after you said you were going to, that's my birthday. And I could cut it and edit it so that, hey, I'm here for my birthday, and he was like, sure, absolutely.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did mine before I was doing this podcast. So I've emailed him a couple times saying, hey, any chance you'll let me come back a second time and kind of promote the podcast? No luck yet. So that's awesome. So tell me, you mentioned how many shows you've gone. That's certainly very impressive.
And I've got 5 more in the pocket.
Yay. So what are you going to see? What are you seeing in this tour?
DC, Greensboro, Miami at the Hard Rock in the pit, which, I mean, it's 7,000 people and it's in the pit. So I got to believe I'm like one of a very small number.
Yeah.
And then Denmark and Hamburg.
Oh, nice. What is, tell me some stories from shows. I'm sure there's got to be some. Tell me some more besides, of course, you've already said a pretty good one. You stole your damn chair. So, that's already pretty impressive.
So I actually have 5 that I wrote down, and I'm sure there's a ton more.
Okay.
But so I got to see the last time Clarence did Jungle Land in Baltimore.
Nice.
I got to see when the night I was at, I think it was RFK, the night Johnny Cash died. Bruce was playing. He walked out by himself. He sang. He sang a Johnny Cash. I forget the name of the song is not coming to me. Yeah. But he came out, sang a Johnny Cash song by himself in all black, didn't say a word. And then lights went back off. And then like 10 minutes later, the whole band came out. And that was kind of his tribute to him.
That's nice.
Yeah. I got to see him do Prince in Brooklyn. I guess it was that Monday after Prince died.
Yeah, that cover Purple Rain, which is pretty epic.
Nils absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I agree.
We got in late because that's the one time I got burned on buying scalper tickets. They were bad tickets. Okay. Only one time out of 38, I got burned. Anyway, so we got in very close to showtime, and we were walking on the concourse, and I heard the first like 2 notes for Purple Rain. I looked at my wife. We got to go now, go. And I mean, so we just bolted to the seat to get there.
Okay.
Bowie, I got to see him in Pittsburgh. Got to see him do Rebel Rebel, and that was fun because the one part where it says "Hot Tramp, I love you so," he stopped, and the whole crowd sang it without. I mean, it was like everybody knew what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then the song that he did, I think that really, it was one of my favorites, was "Racing in the Streets" in Arizona by himself. Well, I mean, for most of it, on the piano, as the first song for the encore.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. When you go, do you have a preference on, do you like being in the pit? Do you like a seat? Where do you like going?
I'm too old anymore to sit to get the pit. I mean, it's nice, but we did the pit in Padua Padua. We did the pit in Europe.
Okay.
And that was, I'm sorry, we did it in Prague.
Okay.
And that was just a long ass day. Because we had to get there. We got there at like 2, and then of course the concert's over at midnight. I mean, so that was just a long, and you're standing all day. Obviously, I mean that's a long day. That's to me that's a little bit more of a young man's game.
Yeah. So I'm a man of size, and the same thing, right? Like I might be able to stand for a whole show, right, with the energy and everything, but there's just no way beforehand. And God bless people who do. I admire them, and they do that, but it is.
It's a long day.
It is for a very long day. So those are some great memories and great stories. Talk about songs and albums. Tell me about, are there songs or albums that you specifically mean a lot to you or your family?
It almost depends on. There's nothing that really that's really specific. I mean, okay. I think "Born in the USA" just because of the timing.
Yeah.
But it's like you're probably the same way. Favorite song, I'll give it to you now, but 6 months from now it might be something completely different.
Yeah.
And like right now, favorite song is "Real World" from an LA concert in 1990.
Yeah. Yeah, what I tell Vince, Vince, is when people ask me, I usually say that "Better Days," "Land of Hope and Dreams," and "The Third Changes Every Day." It just those 2 songs really speak to me. But
Land of Hopes and Dreams, and what he's done to that now live is, I mean, tearing the roof off the sucker music. I mean, that is very, very exciting to listen to, for sure.
Did you go to Broadway?
Went to Broadway, and I actually got to meet him in Broadway or at Broadway.
Tell me that story.
So, I mean, so we had tickets, and I think it was March, so the weather wasn't that great. But kind of watching the social media and everything, I kind of knew, he had to get there. He's got to get there by like 7 for the show. And if there's a line, it usually starts lining up. I had heard as early as noon.
Right.
Because obviously he's got to walk in one specific area. So, I mean, if you get there early enough, you've got to know you're at least going to see him. How much you get to interact with him. Well, that depends on him. But I mean, at least he's going to be RFT. He's going to be right there.
Yes.
And so we went over about 3:30, quarter to 4, and we got there, and there was only like 10 to 15 people. And I'm like, this actually might work.
Yeah.
I mean, we might actually have something here. So, and we were ready to stay there until the show. So we stayed there, for another, I guess, 3 hours. And they had put up the barricades at that point so that he could go in and wouldn't get bum rushed and everything. And so we ended up on kind of like right on the rail on one of the two sides when they split everybody up, because we were like number 20. So which was I was touching the rail. So I was like, okay, maybe. And so at 6:45, the big Suburban rolls up, and that he's got that bodyguard that, at least I've seen almost every time I'm anywhere close.
Right.
It's that same guy that's been with him for quite a few years, if not longer.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know what I mean. So
Sure.
I saw him. I was like, all right, so we're in the right spot. So him and another guy walk out in the middle of the street. Excuse me. The Suburban rolls up, door opens up. He steps out, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, just like that. He's right. I mean, he's just as easy as that. He's standing right there. I'm thinking to myself, I've chased this dude for 4+ decades.
Right.
And all of a sudden, just as easy as that, I felt like Forrest Gump. There he was.
Mm-hmm.
So he walked up, and at the time, I guess something happened later. A child got hurt, or kid got hurt or something. So he stopped doing it. But he would show up with a bunch of pens magic markers to sign so that, he wouldn't have to ask, hey, who's got, so he went down the left-hand side. We were on the right, and basically just walked down and signed, whether it's albums or an arm or a hat, whatever it was. He just signed everything, and, very cordial. And then got to the top of the one side, and then started walking diagonal back to the other side, walking right at me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, hey, what? And I looked at him, and I said, Bruce, can I shake your hand? Can you shake my hand? Of course you can shake my hand. I looked him in the eye. I looked him in the eye and shook his hand, and that was that. That's
nice. That's nice. Did you get to go to any of the book signings?
I didn't. It felt forced. I mean, okay. I'm not saying the story I just told you wasn't forced. That to me just felt forced.
Yeah, sure. I understand. I went down to Austin, got my 7 seconds, so happy I did it. But yes, that's absolutely true. I mean, I've been asked by a couple people, well, what was it like? I said, it was 7 seconds. I talked to him, and I don't know if he heard me, but it's okay, because what I needed to say was more important me saying it than him hearing it, so yeah.
I've got, I don't know if you can see it. Where is it? There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yes.
So I've got that, and somebody said, did you show him that tattoo? And I'm like, that tattoo is for me. It ain't for him. He didn't give a damn about my tattoo.
Yeah.
I mean, that might have actually scared him.
Well, they asked the same thing to me. They said, are you going to tell him about the podcast? And I said, no,
in 7 seconds?
Yeah. In 7 seconds. How am I going to do that? So now I did, there was a box for you to leave stuff. And so I did write a note telling him, hey, I have done the podcast and done that. So that's pretty interesting. Thoughts on his last 2 releases, Letter to You and Western Stars. What were your thoughts on that?
Letter to You, I haven't gotten into all that much. Western Stars, I loved. I thought the movie, and I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Letter to You, I plan on getting into that a little bit more, and just so I could be ready for, a little bit of it was, if I'm not going to see him, I don't know if I necessarily need to get that one ingrained in my head.
Mhm.
And now that I'm going to see him, now it's different. Now I gotta put some effort into Letters to You.
Yeah. So what are you thinking? What do you think the show's going to be? Do you think he's going to do a lot of Letter to You? Do you think he's going to do kind of a greatest hits tour? What's your feeling?
I think he's going to try to do more of the new stuff.
Yeah.
I think the last leg of the River tour, to me that was kind of a greatest hits tour.
Right.
I don't know if you got to see any of them, but I saw 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And those were 3 of the best shows of anything I saw. I saw more firsts, if you will.
Yeah.
It is, it's, I got to see him do this. I got to see him do this,
Yeah.
everybody talks about them like they're trading cards.
Yeah.
But you got to see him do this song here and yada, yada.
Yeah.
I got to see him do more firsts at those 3 shows than I had in a
Mhm.
long time.
Yeah.
Starting, we went to see him in Virginia Beach, and I think there was a big storm, and the orchestra didn't get down there, so the orchestra assisted New York City Serenade wasn't part of that show, but it was part of DC and Pittsburgh, and that was when I was on with Dave Marsh and Jim Rotolo. It was right after Italy when he did the New York City Serenade with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And I told Dave Marsh, I said that's the best song Dave or Bruce has done live in a decade plus. That was outstanding. So in my mind, the reason that he did it over here though all those times is because I put the bug in Dave's ear.
Ah, very nice. I like that. Hey, take credit. Yeah.
Well, hey, in my mind, I can connect those dots really easily.
Yeah, absolutely. So I
think, and I got to see him do Incident on 57th Street and Secret Garden and Bus Stop. And I mean, it was, those 3 last shows, that to me, that was almost like almost like a thank you to his fans, and just kind of a greatest hits tour, even though it was only 10 shows.
Yeah. Are there songs you're chasing for this next tour that you still want to hear?
That's funny. That's funny that you the terminology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we all call it? Are there songs that you're chasing? Do we all call it that?
Yes, it's our bingo card. Yes, there are songs we're chasing.
That's
yes.
funny. My Bruce bingo card. I'm gonna have to use that. That's funny. I had a long list, but those last 10 shows, 3 of them, he crossed off a lot of shit I hadn't heard.
Yeah.
Gypsy Biker, what is one I'd like to do. I'd like to see him do Real World in the version like he did it for 1990. And I was almost thinking that my sign might be Real World LA 1990 to see if he understands what I'm telling him.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And Murder Incorporated, I'm almost sure I've heard it, but I'm going to say I haven't, so I've got a song to chase.
Okay. Yeah. Good. I don't know.
I'd love to hear him do Rhinestone Cowboy.
I still feel that in a more just world, that would have been a top 40 country hit. That in a different time, I just think that if country music was not the way it was, that would have hit, because I think he did a great version of it, and it's a wonderful. So yeah. I you
How
know,
about, how about you? Do you have any songs you're chasing?
so I've never heard Better Days. So that's absolutely on my list. I got to go to Broadway, so The Wish,
Yep.
I got crossed off that. That was, one of them I'd really love to see. Um, I've told the story multiple times, Vince, but I'll tell it really quickly. I love This Is Your Sword from, from the High Hopes, right?
Yep.
And so I was at Houston. He was supposed to open with it, and Morella looked at him and said, "Hey, we're in Houston. You should do Seeds." So he crossed through This Is Your Sword and played Seeds. Now,
You were like, Morello, you son of
Morella, exactly. And what's funny is the last time he was in Houston, he opened with Seeds as well. So it's like it isn't like I got to check a different, but in Seeds it does in Houston town. So the audience went crazy. So I'd love to see that. The cover I'd love to see. I grew up all over, but I went to high school and college in Louisiana, and the McNeese State is the college I went to. Jolie Blanc is their fight song. So I would
Yep.
love to hear him do Jolie Blanc live.
Yep.
That would be fun. So yeah. And then of course, almost anything off Western Stars and Letter to You, right? I'm ready for any of those. I if I was the priest, I hope he's going to do, and I do hope he does a couple of Western Star songs. I think that any of them I will be happy with, so that will be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any songs you don't like hearing live?
So this gets me in trouble. So I am not a fan of Prove It All Night necessarily. Um, I enjoy Jungle Land live, but I don't bow to the magic of it like so many other people. There are so many other songs that mean more to me emotionally than Jungle Land. Prove It All Night, I'm not a big fan of. My wife asked the question, because I went to 4 River shows when he was doing the full album, right?
Yep.
And she goes, "Are you not bored?" Because one of the things she knows is Bruce changes the set list so much. And so since so much of the set list is the same thing, and I went, the songs I love, I still love. The songs like Ramrod, I could take or leave. I took her leave, but it was enough to hear. Like, I was a casual fan of Independence Day till I
Yep.
heard him live,
Yep.
and him talking about his father and
Yep.
the connection, Vince, that he's now at the age older than his father was when he wrote it.
Yep.
That really meant a lot to me. Just that connection spoke to me pretty high.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one song from the River tour that really stood out to me, that he really kind of, it feels like he paid attention to, was Stolen Car.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, what he did with Stolen Car, I was like, holy shit. I've never heard it like that before.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I did want to spend just a minute. You mentioned that
I did get to meet 2 of them, by the way.
Oh yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me that story.
So and they were both in Europe.
Okay.
So Curtis King, we were walking around Prague
Okay.
the day before the concert, and we were just discovering the town, and we walked by probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 people, and one of them was a pretty big buff dude, black guy, and so obviously in that town stood out a little bit.
Yeah.
But it really didn't dawn on me. Beth, my wife, picked up on it. She's like, "That's him. That's the guy." I'm like, "That's him who? That's what guy? The guy from the band. What band? From Bruce, from the band."
Oh, that's so great.
I turn around and I'm looking, I'm like, holy shit, I think she's right. So I started. So at this point, they had stopped. I think they were lost. Their group
Okay.
was lost. So they're looking around at the street signs, trying to figure out where they are. And I walked right up to Curtis and I said, "Excuse me," and he said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't mean to bother you, but I got to ask you." Now the concert was the next night.
Yeah.
I don't mean to bother you, but are you? Because I didn't want to call out his name and say, "Hey, are you?"
Yeah.
I just said, "Excuse me, are you busy tomorrow night?" And he just started laughing like, "I'm busted." He knows exactly who I am.
Oh, that is a great way to ask.
So he's like,
I love
he
that.
just kind of looked at me and laughed at me and said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, pretty much." I was like, "And you have no idea what you're doing." He's like, "Not a clue."
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't get a picture. We should have gotten a picture, but we shook his hand. We said, "Hey, look forward to seeing you tomorrow night, Curtis. And, have fun."
Yeah. That's great. I love that. I love that. Little Steven was doing
Little Steven was the other. Little
yeah,
Steven was the other one I met. Go
yeah.
ahead.
He was going to play at the Hard Rock Cafe, one of his underground sessions, and they ended up not having him play. So he and his whole band were there having dinner, and he met everyone, was very nice, took pictures. But Eddie Mannion was there too, and
Yeah.
I got to talk to him a little bit and get a picture taken of, and so that was kind of nice. Just really nice to see them, and that's great. What's your story about meeting Little Steven?
So this was Italy.
Okay.
This was Milan. I mean, maybe he stayed. Maybe Bruce stays at Four Seasons everywhere, but
Yeah.
I kind of knew Four Seasons is where he was going to stay.
Okay.
And the concert was at 8, so I'm kind of like, all right, he's going to want to leave the hotel at 6.
Yeah.
And so we got to the hotel at like 20. Of course we drove over to Four Seasons. We got to the hotel at like 5:45, and there's probably about, I don't know, 100 other idiots,
Yeah.
stalkers, doing the same thing that my wife and I are about to do. And so I'm like, all right, we're in time. Let's let's just see what happens. We got time to kill. So I dropped Beth off. I said, "Okay, you wait here. I'm gonna go park the car, and then so that way, if anybody comes through, at least you will have seen him." So she goes out and she's waiting in front of the hotel, and so I drive down the end of the street. I take a hard left. Very first spot, the very first spot is open. So I park there. I get out. I look up, and little Stevie and his handler are standing right there.
Nice.
And so I kind of looked down, and at first I'm like, okay, that was little Stevie. It was. I had to let it register, and I didn't want to freak him out, even though I was freaking out. So I stood there for a second, and I didn't know what else to do. So I pulled up my pant leg because I had just gotten the tattoo. I pulled up the pant leg and showed him the tattoo. And he's on the phone, and I'm sure he was talking to Bruce because of the conversation was, "Yeah, we're going to leave here in a few minutes, and yeah, I'll see you downstairs," and that kind of thing. So maybe it wasn't Bruce, but it sure sounded like he was talking to Bruce.
Okay.
So I stand there for a minute, and he saw the tattoo, and he starts, I don't know whether it was laughter or concern, but he just kind of smiled at me and, like, "All right, calm down, give me a second." So he hung up the phone. And I looked at his handler and I said, I was trying to be respectful. Looked at his handler and I said, "Okay, if I talk to little Stevie?" And Steven piped in and said, "Sure." Went over, introduced myself, shook his hand, said, big fan, and the usual shit that comes out of your head when in that scenario.
Yeah.
And then when you're done with everything you got to say, then it gets kind of awkward. It's like, okay, it's time to go. But I wanted a picture. I'm like, "Little Stevie, any chance I can get a picture?" And he's like, "No," as if to say, "I'm about to go on stage. You're done."
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, that's not what I wanted to hear, but
Yeah.
I understood it on some level, being in sales and doing
Yeah.
big sales meetings and everything like that. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So
It is. Yeah.
yeah, he's working.
Right.
He's working.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that, right?
Right. Yeah. So so I was like, all right, I need to get out of here as gracefully as I possibly can without looking like a douche.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, thanks a lot. Great meeting you. Have a great night. I know I will, and I'm out.
Right.
So yeah, those are my two. Actually,
Those
three meeting Bruce.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I did want to let you you mentioned you're a new father.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. And is she growing up with a soundtrack of Bruce?
She is. I don't know if she's actually hearing it yet, but
Yeah.
she's certainly. The rides to daycare are certainly certainly have a Bruce soundtrack. And yeah, my wife and I adopted her during the pandemic, and there were some issues because she was in Pennsylvania, and
Yeah.
and the courts were closed, so wife and baby had to stay in Pennsylvania for a little bit. July they were able to come back, and it ended up okay. Excuse me, but it was a little trials and tribulations getting there. And she's I guess 27 months now, 28
Yeah.
months, and walking, talking, and basically rules the roost as
Yeah.
you would probably expect.
Yeah.
Yes, she is our first.
That is like, and living proof means so much more now, don't you? When you listen to living proof.
Very much so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Well, congratulations. And I know you are counting, crossing your fingers that you're going to be able to take her to a show someday,
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
It's that
You just do the
you
age
do the math. Yeah.
the age math, which we
Yeah.
all do, don't we?
Yes.
I mean,
We do.
we got to figure this tour is going to go until September of 24.
Okay.
And maybe at that point she'd be old enough.
Yeah.
But that's it.
So
because that, I mean, how old is he going to be in 24? I mean,
so
and it's not just him, it's the rest of them. I mean, all due respect, Stevie doesn't look that good.
Yeah. So funny story. I've got an episode as we're recording this that's coming out on Friday, and Gab is the host. She hosts a Taylor Swift podcast, but she's a huge Bruce fan as well. And she talked about that her parents took her to her first show at 7, and it was Bruce. And she goes, and I remember I fell asleep, but
Yep.
she goes, I do have that bragging that at 7 I was at a Bruce show. So
Right on.
that's it. Yeah, right. I agree with that. Good. Well, before I get to the Mary question, any final thoughts? Anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Good. All right. So, if you
How
are,
about you? Any final thoughts on your end?
well, we are as we're recording this, we are trying to. It is a dark time on social media, and for Springsteen, there should be much rejoicing, but there is angst in ticket buying, and
let's be honest, Landau didn't help it. I mean, his response to me was a bit tone deaf, regardless of how probably true the answer was.
Yeah.
My God, it was tone deaf. It's like, because it's not just the prices, it's the anxiety, it's everything folks had to go through, and the frustrations of dealing with the Ticketmaster site. It's all, it's not just the money, but at the same time, nobody's guaranteed tickets. I mean, it's not a birthright, just because you've been a fan for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, you're not due a fucking ticket. I mean, I'm sorry, you're not.
Yeah.
And
I was trying to make some of that same arguments on Twitter, and I kind of got pushed back a little bit and said that I was being insensitive. And what I meant was, yes, tickets are too expensive. And yes, this dynamic pricing sucks. The reality is I was able to get 3 tickets for Tulsa and 3 tickets for Dallas, all now they're upper sections, but they're all under $200 each. And I don't have to have a pit seat. I don't have to have a lower level seat. I know that the amount of times we are going to see Bruce perform live it is coming to an end. He may tour another.
What's your number, by the way?
I'm only at 17.
Right on.
Yeah. So, so I if he tours another 20 years, I mean, it's still less than what he's been doing, right? The road in front of him is less than the road behind. So I just
by a long shot. And I mean, couldn't this be his parachute? I mean, don't get me wrong, both sides have very valid arguments.
Absolutely, yes.
But I mean, I sell bourbon like I mentioned, and there's the one brand, I won't say it exactly, but Schmack Me Man Winkle. I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You can buy it at a store, for, or it might be sold at wholesale for $100.
Yeah.
But then you go get it on the gray market, and you got to spend $1,000 to get the same bottle.
Yeah.
Well, these tickets that we're talking about are the same thing. And when Bruce's company watches people that don't have any right making a living, let alone money, off of these tickets, I understand that they want to close the gap between the sale price and the resale price.
Yeah,
I understand that. I mean, I get that too. Why should Ticketmaster or Joe Blow around the corner, why should he get to make a living off of Bruce and his tickets when he don't deserve it? But I understand. I certainly, obviously, understand the fans' angst and anger about it too. So I get both sides, but both sides, to me, they're both very valid.
I think so too. And what I was trying to make the point is I feel like, and this is just my opinion, and we know what those are like, that the only way everyone would be happy is if everyone got the tickets in the area they wanted at the price they wanted to pay. That's the only thing where everyone on fandom is happy. And that's just unrealistic.
What land is that?
Exactly. Right. I mean, I remember there were people furious that people went to more than one Broadway show. They were furious that someone went to more than one show. And I brought up the fact, I said, well, aren't some people getting lotto tickets and pit tickets for multiple shows? Shouldn't you only take one pit ticket and then let somebody else have it? Oh, that's different, Jesse. No, it's the same scenario. If
how much was your Broadway ticket?
It was pretty significant. I didn't get the most expensive, but it was like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 500. I mean, if you want to spend 500 and go 3 times, I had to spend 750. I wasn't going to go again, but I mean, if I wanted to spend 750 again, why shouldn't I be able to? I mean,
I just, it is, and somebody else got mad, but I do feel like there is, and you said it really well, Vince, there is an entitlement. I've been following you since 1977. I used to pay $10 to go see you, and you just got your catalog for $500 million. You should give every show free. why? Are
Well,
you working your job free? I mean, and I will name a brand. Okay, so 2 or 3 years ago in 2014, the Cowboys were losing, and my son said, I can't take this anymore. So he went and got a bottle of Blanton, took a drink, and then they won. And so I said, okay, you don't mess with a thing. So back in 2014, we could go to the liquor store, and for $60, you could get a bottle of Blanton. So like
not anymore.
that's the point. 7 weeks in a row, the Cowboys went on a winning streak, and for 7 weeks, I bought Blanton. I saw one the other day, and I said, "Oh, how much for your Blanton?" $2,000. I'm like, no. I said, you know,
But
yeah,
someone's going to pay it.
yes, yeah, and but what I also understand, and you understand, is that a bourbon that has aged 7, 8, 9 years in a barrel, probably only 50% is the barrel left, because the angel share has taken all that.
Yep.
You've got all that, and you've paid taxes every year on that. You know, patient people make bourbon. And I make this joke. My day job is a call center, right? My people take phone calls, and I go, you know, time and patience make good call center agents, and time and patience make good bourbon or whiskey, aged whiskey.
Yep.
And you can't rush the process.
No doubt. But the one piece, that store probably bought it for a lot less
Yes.
than that $2,000. And that's, that's the piece that Blanton's, if I was Blanton's, I'd be furious. It's like,
Yeah.
why does this moat get to make that kind of coin
Yeah.
on my product when I don't?
Yeah, exactly. And hence you go back to, I agree with you. John did not do, Mr. Landau did not. I think there should have been a better way to say this, and to be able to feel people's pains.
He didn't
But
know, but they didn't have to say anything just yet.
yeah,
That you know what? If social media is bothering you, here's a thought: turn it off.
turn it off.
Just turn it
Absolutely.
off.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have to pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not an easy answer for
No,
sure.
there is not. Yeah.
And it's and I certainly, like I said, I certainly understand both sides.
I certainly do too. And it breaks my heart to see people who have never had a chance to see Bruce not getting a chance to see him. I understand people who are in an economic situation that can't go.
The process is, to me, that's what's egregious. That's what somebody should have a problem with.
Yeah.
Not the coin, not the price, but that process. That's deplorable. I mean, that you can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear people, I was waiting for an hour and a half. I got my tickets. I got bounced 9 times before that kind of shit. That's outrageous. That's what somebody should have to answer to that slice of what happened.
I absolutely agree. And the other thing, I hate that they call it verified fan, because it tries to imply, that people take offense. Well, what it means is verified human, not you're a verified Springsteen fan, right? And
yes,
but
somebody
texted
me and said, oh, I didn't get tickets. I was a verified fan for 6 months and I didn't get tickets. And I'm like, what? You're just clueless.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. This has been so much fun. So,
by the way, I am on Insta.
Yes.
Vin Whiskey 62.
All right. If you are, hopefully you're a client of Vince's, you're checking this out, or your friend or family, I end every podcast with a Mary question. Jay Armstrong, who is an honors English teacher, he recently retired. He would spend 2 days breaking apart Thunder Road, looking at the lyrics, talk about the themes, and at the end of the 2 days, he would ask, does Mary get in the car? So, Vince, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. You want to explain why you think so?
The energy of the song and the insinuation all the way through tells me she was in the car.
Okay. Nice. I love it. All right. So thank you. This was a blast. Enjoy the shows. We have a little bit of time to wait, but it'll pass faster than we know. And so
with a 2.5-year-old, you're damn sure it will.
Yes, it will. Absolutely. Sounds good, my friend. Listeners, go check with your family doctor, find out, go get vaccinated, go get boosted, take care of yourself, and let's all be kind to each other, because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.